So, good evening, everyone. My name is Alfonso Mayfield. I'm president of Florida Public Services Union. I would like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. And I'll talk briefly about why we're here, and then we're going to get into it. So, of course, everyone knows that we're in the midst of an epic pandemic assault. This is one of the most trying times I think that any of us have faced in our lifetime. And at this point, more so than any other time, we really have to figure out how we stick together. As a union, we had two critical goals that we wanted to achieve when this pandemic started. We wanted to make sure that our members were kept whole and that they were kept safe. And then we also wanted to create a space for our members to be able to ask questions about what was going on, and also hear from elected leaders and other community leaders about how to stay safe, what was the forecast for what was going to come next, and how we could actually work together during this period and what we needed to do. And so we reached out to different elected leaders, and we're very happy that Mayor Keith James was willing to take some time out of his busy schedule, especially during this period, to actually meet with us. So let me just briefly introduce the mayor, and then we're going to hop into it. Prior to being elected mayor, Keith James served as the District 4 City Commissioner from 2011 to 2019, and he also served as president of the commission twice. During that time, Mayor James helped to create West Palm Beach's strategic plan, the finance plan, the water plan, and the mobility plan. Mayor James is the immediate past president of the Palm Beach County League of Cities and Paragon, Florida, where he championed a collaborative approach to solving regional and state issues on equality, home rule, health and addiction challenges, as well as transportation challenges. He was born in Wichita, Kansas, and before going into politics, he was a lawyer in the private sector where he worked with owners of small and medium-sized companies to be successful. With that, I would like to thank the mayor for joining us. So the way that this call is going to break down, we're going to hear from the mayor for probably 5 to 10 minutes. And what the initial frame is, we wanted to speak about COVID and how the city is dealing with it initially. Then we're going to take some time and actually get questions and answers. People have submitted questions, and we're going to go through them and allow the mayor and his team to be able to answer questions. And also I want to say, we aren't playing a game of gotcha with anyone. So if there are questions or things that we aren't completely sure of, then we're actually just going to tab them, get answers, and follow up with the people that asked them. So if we don't know, we're going to say we don't know, because this is really in the best interest of trying to get the best information out and make sure that everyone feels like that they understand what's happening. So let's start. Mayor James, thank you for joining us. Would you take a few minutes and talk about the city's dealing with COVID-19, how they're dealing with the crisis, and also if you want to talk about how this changed, you had a very bold, very aggressive, visionary strategic plan for taking the city forward, how you're thinking that may change that.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you very much for that very warm, heartfelt introduction. You read it exactly as I wrote it. Anyway.
With some additions, but yeah.
No. It's all good. It's all good. But the message I want to get across initially is how much I appreciate our city employees, all 1,700 plus city employees. And you hit the nail right on the head. This has been a very difficult time for all of us. This pandemic, while on its face it is a healthcare issue, it's a health issue, its tentacles reach into so many other facets of our lives, economics, religion, our social interaction. This is one indeed for the ages, and just like our grandparents remembered the Great Depression, each of us, under the sound of our voice, will remember the Great Pandemic. And so I understand that so many people are hurting. It's probably rare that anyone listening to me does not have either a direct knowledge of someone who's either affected by or passed away as a result of this pandemic, or you're probably not more than two friends, two connections away from someone who has been lost as a result of this pandemic. So people are in pain. They're scared because we don't know the future. West Palm Beach has undergone, battles with hurricanes, and we kind of know that playbook. That playbook's on the shelf, and we could pull it down when there's a hurricane headed in our direction. This one is totally different. There's no playbook for this one. We don't know when we will have the worst days. We don't know when it will recede. Will recede. Now, the one thing I'm positive of, and I hope that everyone gets this, is that we will survive this. We as a city, we as the city and the 1,700 plus employees and the city of West Palm Beach, we will get through this. And I tell people all the time, it's going to be hell going through it. So fasten your seatbelts. But we will see the other side. But back to city employees. So many have stepped up in the face of this crisis to keep our city as operational and functional as possible. And we didn't shutter the doors because we have people to serve. When folks turn on their water faucets to wash their hands, they still expect clean water to come out. When people go outside their doors to go for their walk, they want to make sure that their streets are clean. And if they do have an unfortunate incident in their home and dial 911, they want to make sure that someone's going to answer and the first responders will be at their door to help them out. So we as a city, we didn't have the luxury of just shuttering our doors and calling it a day, because there's still roughly 115,000 people that we have to service. Now, we have taken steps to mitigate the potential exposure. We immediately activated our Emergency Operations Center to level 2, which provides us with a number of options from a procurement standpoint, from an executive order standpoint, so that we can be nimble in responding to the crisis. We've been following state and county orders for operations of our community and city operations, and we've implemented a number of city executive orders. We've encouraged people to practice social distancing, a word that, a month ago none of us had ever heard of. Now it's at the tip of our tongue. And encouraging people to stay at home so that they can stay safe. We're cautiously optimistic. It does look like the curve is beginning to flatten, but we still have to remain vigilant. And I also launched a COVID-19 response unit, which will be led by our city commissioners as well as former mayor, because I think while it's also important to figure out how we are going to deal with the needs of the present, whether it's in housing, whether it's in economic support, working with seniors, children, and families, providing food, water, and medicine, it is also important for us to start thinking even now about what recovery looks like. What is the world going to look like after this pandemic? And I don't have the answer, but I think it's important to get people, I would say around the table, but not around the table, but either in conference calls or virtual meetings to begin discussing how we can recover from this. Even internally, we've tried to, we came out the gate asking the department heads to put together plans for telecommuting so that we could get as many people as possible to work from home via technology. And we've tried to provide all the departments with the necessary PPE so that those who are still in city facilities, and by the way, I've been coming in every day. I've not been telecommuting. I've been coming here because I think it's important for me to let those who are still here know that I, as mayor, am here with them. And so we've tried to make gloves, masks available to each and every department. And I'll tell you now that if you don't think that you have enough PPE, please let us know, because it has been a priority of mine to make sure that those who are still in city facilities working have as much protection as they feel necessary. We have limited the guests to City Hall and other city facilities to by appointment only. And even this week, we began to screen everyone coming into City Hall, including employees, with a digital thermometer to try to limit the risk of exposure. Now, listen, these steps that we're taking now are difficult, but we know from everything that we've seen and read that these steps are necessary and that they will lead to a safe future. And again, I just want to end this, and we'll get into the question and answers by expressing my true appreciation for all of the employees who are continuing to hold up the banner for the city of West Palm Beach as we continue to service the citizens of this great city. So please be safe. Keep up your great work. Thank you for all you do. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I do have with me Director of Human Resources, Jose Luis Rodriguez. And so we will try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. Proceed.
Great. So we're getting the questions. So the first question we have is, will the Employee Healthcare Center have the capability of testing employees for coronavirus?
The short answer to that, and Jose, interrupt me, is probably no. If you have been up in the facility, it's relatively small, it's confined, and I don't think it's a good idea. Just like, you don't want to go to the emergency room for testing. We don't want to have people who may have it, who are coming there to get tested for it, to possibly infect others who may be in the clinic for another reason, whether it's to pick up a prescription, for the routine physical, et cetera. So the best practices have been not to have those with the potential, who are potentially suffering from the virus, in the same room, particularly a relatively confined room, with those who don't have it. So the protocol has been that if you are experiencing symptoms, express that to the doctor, and we will get you out to get tested at the testing facilities that are available. What we are working on is trying to establish a relationship with a physician outside of the, separate from the clinic, who has testing kits who would give priority to city employees. So that's in the works, and we're having those discussions. Okay. Did I get that right, Jose?
Yeah. Good. Question number 2. So this is the beginning of it, is a preamble of a bunch of compliments when I get to the question, so bear with me. First of all, you're doing a great job as the new mayor, and I appreciate every opportunity you've shown at thanking us for what we do. It goes a long way when we hear from you as our leaders appreciate us, so thank you. Thanks for our leaders. I wanted to know if there was any possible way to give essential workers of the city some incentives for their dedication to their position, and all they being on the front line is still working effectively amidst the pandemic.
To get them what?
So basically, I'll go to the end to the question. Is there any way to give essential workers of the city some incentive for their dedication to their position, although they've been working on the front line amidst the pandemic?
Well, I think this may be related to, and we've heard this from others, and the incentive to a worker, to me, is just more money. And listen, I don't know if it's, what do you want to call it, hazard pay, pandemic pay, or whatever. We are exploring, the potential fiscal impact. What I will say is that after this storm passes, and when I say this storm, I also mean the fiscal hits that we're going to take, because we're going to take some as a city. But once we get back on our feet, if I'm still mayor, I'm going to do everything possible to ensure that every employee, and Jose Luis is looking at me like I'm crazy, but every employee will receive a fiscal token of appreciation for me, because I know, and as I said before, how difficult this has been on everyone. And again, it's because of the uncertainty. You don't know if the person that's sitting in the next to you, whether they're 6 feet away or 8 feet away, has it. You don't know when you go home whether your child or your partner has been exposed. We just don't know. And that uncertainty could be very stressful. I realize that. So while I can't promise any financial incentive in the short term, because one of the other areas of uncertainty is what kind of budget hit we're going to take as a city. We don't know. And I've got to be a steward of the city's funds. That's my job as mayor, to make sure that I'm a proper steward. But I will tell you that once we get through this, in addition to partying like it's 1999, we will certainly I will do everything I can as mayor to show appreciation in a tangible fiscal way to the employees.
And I think, to be fair to the question too, there are some direct questions about hazard pay, and we'll get to those in a second. I think this was just more so a more broader question about some way to honor those workers who are having to go out amidst what's going on in the pandemic. So the next question is, can essential workers be placed on a task system once work is completed, clock out and go home to minimize risk of infection, and be compensated for an 8-hour day?
Jose, do you want to take that?
Basically, hourly workers and most SEIU employees are hourly workers, are paid based on, as you know, federal law. So they're really, under federal law and under state law, you have to get paid 1 hour for each hour worked. So there really isn't the ability for us to switch an hourly employee and say, you got your work done in 4 hours instead of 8, but I'm going to pay you, 8 hours. That just creates a whole bunch of regulatory issues for the city that we have to adhere to the hourly schedule. That doesn't address the issue of alternative schedules. If supervisors want to work out alternative schedules with employees so that they're only working 6 hours instead of 8, and the other 2 they use their leave, for example, to stay home, that's allowable. But for hourly employees, it has to be hour for each hour of work performed.
And I've encouraged the department heads to be creative with staggered shifts. We know it's not a good thing to have everybody rushing to the time clock at the same, around the same time. So we tried to be creative with staggering the shifts as much as possible. So we're looking for ways within the boundaries of the law and the regs, which we still have to abide by, but we are looking for ways in which to minimize or mitigate human contact.
Right. So we can, on that one specifically, Jose, let's have a conversation offline about some things that are happening from other parts of the state that under similar circumstances. So the next question is, the deadline for medical and dental insurance can be extended. New plans start in July. Or can we pay less for the insurance at this moment? Because we haven't been able to use the insurance like we would normally, because most doctors are canceling appointments or not giving any until the situation is better.
So if you're saying, I don't think we have the ability to cancel some months of insurance coverage. And listen, I understand you haven't been able to get into the doctor, et cetera, because it wasn't used in a particular month. The goal of health insurance is having it when you need it. And so the premiums that we pay is based upon a yearly basis, and or determined for the plan year, not who was actively using it 1 month versus another month. Unfortunately, I don't think we have that flexibility.
Okay. How long for every man, woman, and child will have the opportunity to be tested for corona safely and quickly, while being able to get a mask, gloves, disinfectant spray, and hand sanitizer for themselves? I want to slightly change this question a little bit. and ask, you are the mayor of West Palm Beach. The mayor of West, the city of West Palm Beach is very important, but we, of course, operate within a broader ecosystem of cities within Palm Beach County. What are you also hearing about testing being more readily available in Palm Beach County broadly, and also access to PPE not only at the city of West Palm Beach but more broadly?
Well, let me take the testing. That has continued to be a challenge, and everyone from Congress on down. I was on a conference call with Congresswoman Frankel this morning, and obviously the issue, in fact I raised it, the issue of testing kits and the availability of testing kits came up, and she too has been trying everything possible, humanly possible, to get more testing kits. It's unfortunate that Palm Beach County is so woefully under-tested. Now, there are some some positive indicators. Over the weekend, I think the governor changed it so now you could get appointments at the Fit Team testing facility without having exhibited symptoms. So people who are not showing symptoms can still go to get tested, and hopefully that is working. We're also trying to use more to get more involved with mobile testing, particularly in some of the underserved neighborhoods in our city. There was a very successful effort this morning over near Dunbar, what was formerly known as Dunbar Village, where Quantum Foundation and Found Care had a mobile testing unit there, and 134 people got tested. And tomorrow, our emergency coordinator will be meeting with the Department of Health to see if we can get another mobile testing unit to go to those neighborhoods on a regular basis. So we are trying to find out where we can make a difference, make an impact on the testing front, but it really turns on the availability of testing kits. That's why, because there are a couple of doctors that I met recently, that come to me recently, who have those kits, and that's why I want to be able to work on an arrangement between our clinic and those individual doctors to see if they will give, if our city employees who are exhibiting symptoms and are recommended to get tested, rather than going to the testing facility, they can go meet with one of these private physicians as part of the health care plan. So now, as to PPE, there are some rays of sunshine there as well. I believe, and again, that we have acquired enough PPE for all city employees who want that, particularly while they're working, to have it available. And again, if someone who is listening to this call, or Alfonso, if you're aware of someone who feels that they don't have access to PPE, please let me know, because it was my intent to, as soon as it opened up, obviously most of the PPE are going to the healthcare providers, those who are on the front lines in hospitals, and God bless them, those are the true heroes. I mean, those folks are looking at it they're looking in the eyes of death each and every day. And so obviously they are the ones who have the top priority for PPE. But we did have some supplies open up, and I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, I expect that everyone who works for the city has access to that. Hand sanitizers, gloves, and masks. But, it's a challenge. It's a challenge throughout the county to get it. But I think hopefully we're well positioned in that regard.
So our next 4 or 5 questions are all about hazard pay. So I'm actually going to just turn them into one question. And the question is basically, for those who are needing to physically go into work, why are city employees not being offered hazard pay?
The short answer is because we don't know about the fiscal impact. All right, but here's what we're doing. I mean, that is why you're not getting it now. I'm not saying you will never get it. We have both the police union and the fire union who will file grievances against the city. They're seeking it. You may have read, because it's certainly people make sure I knew about it, that the Sheriff's Department over the weekend has granted their officers hazard pay. And I understand that. But again, being a steward of the city's funds. I'm assessing now the fiscal impact. One of the things I'm looking at is whether the city will be reimbursed by FEMA if we do start paying hazard pay, because that will certainly have an impact on my decision. But all I can say is that I'm looking at the fiscal impact of doing that. I haven't discounted it, but I don't want to pull that trigger yet without knowing what impact it will have upon our budget. So bear with me and trust me that we are exploring that possibility, but I don't have an answer yet. And I can't. Yes, go ahead.
Here's a sub follow-up question, and it's more so about from the reimbursement side of your answer. So we know that there's discussions on the federal level now, and they're starting to talk with local political jurisdictions about an additional stimulus that would be in part to help fund local services, similar to what happened in the recession in 07 and 08. If you don't have an answer on this, that's fine, but I wanted to ask, have you started to hear that? I know that we are at the national level, and I was actually on a call about it this morning. If you're capable of saying, what are you hearing, what are you asking for, and what would it be helpful for us to be saying as we're talking to Speaker Pelosi and others on Capitol Hill?
Well, I think the ask is get money directly to cities. You know, when they did the first go around, it only went to governmental agencies with 500,000 or more, whether cities of more than 500,000 people or the county. So now, whatever share we got from the first go around is going through the county, and we're still trying to figure out how the county is going to allocate that to the city. So I don't know how much is coming in, but if you have the lobbying muscle, two things I want you to ask for. One is make money directly payable to cities. Don't cut it off at 500,000 residents, because now we as a city have to engage in a bureaucratic application process, which is only going to slow things down. And then the second is having a very broad definition of fiscal impact to the cities, so that we can make the judgments necessary depending upon our own city's circumstances, where that money should go and how we should award it. You know, some folks are going to be hit more by the lack of sales taxes. We, as West Palm Beach, are obviously very much affected by property taxes. So there may be a gap there. So the money we get in now, we might be able to apply to things such as hazard pay. But we want the definition of fiscal impact to be as broad as possible so that we can tailor it to our particular set of circumstances.
Okay, thanks. Next question, will the 401A be open for loans based on COVID-19? And if so, how much as a percentage will be allowed to borrow? I know that some plans are allowing loans up to 100% of value. My wife has lost most of her work, so this is important to me. Thanks.
Jose, I'll let you take this one.
Well, our current 401 plan does have a provision that that employees can ask for loans when they have suffered a loss due to a declared emergency situation. And the way that the plan defines declared emergency is very broadly, because it says examples such as, you know, a roof that needs to be replaced because of a hurricane, but that's an example. It's not all inclusive. So in this situation, because you have a declared emergency, which the COVID-19 pandemic is, employees should be able to apply under our current rules in the plan. The caveat to that is, or the guidelines are, that you can only withdraw 50% up to 50% of the value of the plan, and you have to have at least $2,000 in the plan so that you can withdraw up to $1,000. And you can't have more than 5 outstanding loans at any given time, or more than one loan in 12 months. The reason why there are some restrictions is because the plan is trying to provide, giving the employees the flexibility that they need to be able to provide for their families during an emergency situation, but also making sure that you don't exhaust and spend your entire retirement, because it's very difficult to pay back a large amount of money into that plan, especially if you're living with a lot of responsibilities at home and kids in college or kids in school and you're living paycheck to paycheck. It's very difficult to pay all that money back. And then what happens if you retire and you don't have a retirement? So we think that, the current rules do allow you to ask for emergency loans, and they do allow you to take out up to 50% of the value of your plan.
Okay. So the next question, when the pandemic begins to lessen, Mayor, do you have a plan or some suggestions or guidelines for how we will gradually return to a life of normalcy?
That's a very good question. And I think that everyone has been so caught up with the thinking of what we have to do to flatten the curve and to get through this storm. That's one reason why I put together my COVID response unit, because I wanted to bring in subject matter experts to work with the commissioners to start thinking along those lines. So now that there are parts of the country that are, you're probably hearing from governors in different parts of the country that are seeing that glimmer of sunlight to come through the clouds. People are starting to have those conversations, and so I'm just trying to keep my ear to the ground, participating in these conference calls to see what the best practices are from other areas. I don't think the best practice is to open up the doors all at one time. What I'm hearing is that it may be a more modulated approach to opening for business, and so I would much rather go slower than faster, because what we don't want are those additional spikes, right? Everybody goes running out to the park and playing basketball again and stuff, and then we get hit with another round of this stuff. See, we're never really totally out the picture until there's a darn vaccine. And all the experts are saying it may take like a year before we get a vaccine. So we have to be very careful as to our interaction, because once the spike hits again, we'll have another round of, unfortunately, probably have another round of deaths. It'll be another strain on our healthcare system. So if we get to the point where it looks like we have flattened the curve and maybe the number of infections is decreasing, I, as one, will not have full confidence that we're out of the woods until there is a vaccine that's been approved by the FDA, so that, this is more like the flu. While it may take you down, at least there's a vaccine that you have so it doesn't kill you. And we don't have that yet. And in fact, we don't really know yet how many people have it because we're so under-tested here in Palm Beach County. But to get back to the question as to what life will look like or what steps we will take to return to normal, first of all, I don't know if we'll ever return to normal. What life used to be like in January of this year, I'm not sure people will have the confidence to return to that degree of public interaction. But the conversations, as I started out, this has had such an impact on our businesses, small businesses, restaurants and stuff, that, we got to figure out a way to get people back to work again. And so those conversations will continue. I'll continue to monitor, my team will continue to monitor best practices from other parts of the country. Listen, we're not in this alone, right? I mean, I don't care what part of the country you're in, you're affected by COVID-19. So we'll look at what other cities are doing to get the doors back open.
Well, this isn't a question. This is more so a statement from me. We're the largest healthcare union in the country, and the best timeline that we're hearing is about 18 months from the point of not only getting to a vaccine, but from actually getting the vaccine to people and actually cycling. So we're looking at a plan that could probably take 2 years. And that leads to what is a question by me. I know a lot of small businesses and something like gyms and restaurants, 2 years of social distancing is definitely going to impact the local economy. Do you have any thoughts or ideas or ways on the other side of this that what we can do to support those small businesses or entities that are going to lead to a loss of tax base for the city?
Well, we're going to need help from the federal government with that, and that's what these rounds of COVID relief plans is hopefully doing. I mean, I know one program is from the SBA, the 3Ps, payroll protection plans, are trying to put money in small businesses' hands so they can at least keep people on the payroll. But I think that's limited to like 8 weeks or 12 weeks or something. It's a temporary stopgap. And
right.
We're looking at a 2-year plan because I don't think there's enough money. I don't think there will be enough money organically, enough activity organically from the grassroots level to restore those businesses to their pre-COVID-19 status. People aren't going to have that much money in their pocket to spend, and they aren't going to be willing to get out there and spend it. It's going to be a long time before you see folks, wanting to come down to Clematis by night on a Thursday night. Our mindsets have changed to such a degree that people are very nervous. And again, until we get an established vaccine where people know, all right, if I catch it, there's at least a vaccine that will get me through it. It's a different day. And I say all that to say that the recovery proceeds won't come from the folks who are on the ground, because people just aren't going to feel comfortable enough going to restaurants and going to concerts and stuff like that. It's going to have to be top down, where the money is coming from the federal government to get into the hands of those small businesses and even their employees, so that they can hold on and hold out.
Yeah. So our next question is, and this goes back to the testing question, is it possible for the city to schedule tests off-site per department for employees who are having to be in public, so that we can identify people that need to be properly quarantined, and also to make sure that we aren't infecting anyone else?
So here, and this goes back to what I said earlier. So if someone is exhibiting symptoms and they convince their primary care physician, particularly if it's at the clinic, or their other primary care physician, that they are qualified for a test, what we want to do, what I'm working on now, and hopefully we'll have something by the end of this week we'll be able to announce, is to establish a relationship with a private physician other than our clinic who has testing kits available, who can prioritize City of West Palm Beach employees, that now the clinic can refer our employees who may be sick to that particular physician so that we can give them priority to get testing. So I'm working on establishing those relationships. Now, the protocol is if you feel the symptoms, you're to get tested, and while you're waiting to be tested, while you're waiting for the results, you're to self-quarantine for 14 days. Is that right, Jose?
Yes.
All right, you're self-quarantined, and obviously if you come back positive, you are to be quarantined until you get a doctor's clearance. So we are telling people, and listen, if you have the symptoms, and even if you're unable to get a test and you feel that you've got the fever and all like that, quarantine yourself. And that's what we're telling people. Err on the side of quarantine. Did I get that right? I mean, if there's a doubt that you have it, we don't want you coming to work. We much rather you self-quarantine, get the arrangements to get the test. And so that's the best way that we know under our protocols. What am I missing, Jose?
And under the federal law, if you're quarantining yourself because of COVID, you're going to get paid those 2 weeks that you're going to be in the quarantine. So that's the purpose behind the federal laws, so that employees don't feel that they have to pick, do I get paid or do I self-quarantine? Be safe for yourself, your family, and your fellow employees. And under the federal law, the city will pay up to 80 hours of your pay.
And that's why we also, you got to monitor your own health. I mean, you obviously have thermometers at home. Take your temperature, and if it looks like you're running a temperature, what is it, over 100.4 or something? Yes, yeah, I think it's if you got a temperature over 100 or 99.4, I think is what it is, then don't come into to work. And there are federal programs that will enable you to get paid for that period. But yeah, monitor your own health, monitor your fever, and if you're having symptoms, self-quarantine, get tested as soon as possible.
We did a town hall the other day with Congresswoman Frankel and Congressman Chris, former governor. And one of the things that we discussed offline when I was talking to Congressman, former Governor Chris, is, and this goes to the next question, has the city thought about going to 410 or some other scheduling changes to be able to give essential workers a break and also help to limit contact?
We have thought about that, and we'll continue to talk about it. We've got to see how it impacts. Listen, at some point there are still essential services. Obviously, you've got to have people in the water plant,
right.
But there are maybe some other departments that we can do that with. So that is on the table. We're trying to be as sensitive to and as flexible as possible with scheduling. I don't know if I ever want a day where City Hall goes totally dark. I mean, a business day where City Hall goes totally dark on a consistent basis. But we'll continue discussing internally. It's a good suggestion, and it's something we've looked at.
So here's another question that's right up your alley. Is the city going to consider rescheduling our main revenue-producing events, maybe like a fall festival to replace Sunfest, et cetera?
Sunfest probably not, because they are so they get national acts, and some of those acts depend upon the scheduling for them. Their appearance is months in advance. So the Sunfest organization itself, could we do something along those lines where it may not be Sunfest or it might be something else? That's something to look at. Listen, as I said before, I can't wait till we get to the point where people feel comfortable coming down to our waterfront and enjoying good music, good food, etc. And would like to do that, but I don't want to do it any sooner than what the health experts advise. But I'm looking forward to that. Now, we've been in discussion with the boat show. They still want to do something as early as possibly June, and I don't know if we'll be ready to open up then. And so we're in discussions with them. The city loses a lot of revenue. Not only the city, but the small businesses, the restaurants, the hotels. They lose a lot of revenue when those events aren't happening. But again, we can't take the chance of opening those doors and having that secondary spike. Not on my watch.
Okay. The next question, why are only the operators at the water plant asked to work 12-hour shifts while other employees at the plant are on their normal schedules?
All right, Jose, you want to take that?
Yeah. The work schedules at the water plant are being determined based on the best way to achieve the city's operations and to try to also limit social contact as much as possible. So in the case of the water plant operators, we're doing two things. One of the things that we're doing is that we're trying to keep everyone in the same work group, so that you're not coming in for your shift and working with these two employees today, and then tomorrow you come in for your shift, and it's a totally two different set of employees or co-workers that you're working with. And by trying to keep the same groups together, moving throughout the week, that reduces the number of different people that you come into contact with. In terms of trying to have the 12-hour shifts, it's very similar in reasoning. We're trying to limit as much as possible the in and out of the facility, and trying to keep, trying to get employees to take, longer breaks in between shifts as well. So that's why that was based. We're looking at the functions that need to be carried out, how to best carry those out within the confines of social distancing and rest for employees. And then that's how we're determining that. And there are other positions where you can have a little bit more in and out of employees, so or different work schedules. So that we're taking it on a case by case basis, job function by job function.
And one of the things, right after I declared the state of emergency, I sat down with the department heads and I told them to come up with plans for how they would staff their particular department, making sure that the functions that their department was supposed to provide would still be provided to the citizens. And so we are operating according to the plans that those department heads put together. And we ask them to be as flexible as possible. So, but if there are certain essential services, and I would think that the water plan is one, and the plan that was put together by the department head required those hours, then I've got to defer to that because they're where the boot, they have their boots on the ground with that particular department.
And down to our last.
Yeah, and it's Jose Luis. I was going to point out also that we're trying to balance those operational needs, like the mayor said, but also the fact that all of us have families that we want to get home to. And there are places that are infrastructure related, like water plants and electrical plants and other plants, where sometimes workers are being forced to work 24-hour shifts or 18-hour shifts and sleep there for a day or two, and then a new crew comes in for a day or two. And that would have been a lot more burdensome for employees that wouldn't be able to see their family for a lot longer. So we think that right now this strikes the balance, but we're always open to reassess those operational needs and make changes as needed.
Okay. So here's an interesting question. So my hours are always cut for the summer. I'm afraid that with the pandemic, my hours are going to get completely cut. Can I preemptively file for unemployment?
That's a legal question, and it's one that really the unemployment office would have to answer. But generally, you can only apply for unemployment once you've been notified of your last day. So I think the answer to that is no, but you might want to check with the unemployment office, and you probably won't be able to get a hold of them because their website is crashed and nobody's answered the phone. So I would operate under the assumption that it's no. You could try it, but I don't think you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And by the way, we are offering. We just started that this week because there are now paper forms to apply for unemployment assistance, and we are offering on an appointment basis. Department of HCD is offering assistance with completing those forms for West Palm Beach residents.
Okay. Thanks. And here's our last question. So if an employee contracts the COVID-19 during their work time, which I don't know how you know that, but that's a good question, will it be considered workman's comp?
I mean, that the element, you hit the nail on the head. The element of proof is establishing that it was done while they were at work. I mean, how do you know where you contracted it? So I guess if you are able to successfully prove that you got it in connection with your work, you might be successful. But all workman's comp claims are handled by the law, are handled according to the law, and it's really on a case-by-case basis. So that would be the burden of proof. Someone would have to somehow definitively prove that they got the virus while they were at work. And I don't know how they would do that, but go for it.
So that was our last question. Mayor Jose Luis, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope this isn't the last time.
No,
we feel like
it won't be.
Really good forum.
Thank you for having us.
No problem. So everyone, go ahead, Mayor.
Just in conclusion, again, I want to thank all the employees for doing what they do. But keep in mind that when these problems hit, affecting the residents and affecting the businesses in our city, the first place they look is to city government for help. And so the work that you're doing, while it may seem burdensome to you now, keep in mind that this provides such hope to the residents of the city. We are all public servants, and the public truly relies upon the job that each and every one of you are doing. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart for helping us serve the citizens of West Palm Beach.
Okay. And once again, thank you for taking time out to talk to us, both you and Jose Luis. We're going to keep in conversation. We haven't decided about what we're going to do regarding the hazard pay. I think we're in a conversation with the city. There's a lot of tension around that because we want to do what's fiscally responsible, but we also want to make sure that our members are compensated and are heard. So we're going to stay in conversation, and we look forward to talking to you all in the future.
Absolutely. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you.